team for the Tigers. Here's your ball game. Nick Marshall stands in, steps up, he's going to throw downfield, just a home run ball, and it is tipped off. And Lewis got it on the deflection. Lewis is going to score. Lewis is going to score. Lewis is going to score. Touchdown Auburn. Touchdown Auburn. A miracle in Jordan Hare. Byron waits for the snap into place. There it is. The kick is up. The kick is good. Auburn wins. The Auburn Tigers are on top of the college football world. 56-yarder. It's got, no, does not have the leg. And Chris Davis takes it in the back of the end zone. He'll run it out to the 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game. Auburn's going to win the football game.
You are listening to the Jboy Show, your number one source for Auburn and the SEC.
What's up, everybody? Appreciate you guys joining us for another edition of the Jboy Show. We're really excited to have Auburn beat writer. Again, he's a guy that touches many topics, though. You can find him on Twitter. Obviously, I'll let him plug his handle. But Mr. Josh Vitale. Is it Vitale or is it Vitale?
Vitale.
Vitale. I was all right.
Everyone says it wrong.
Everyone says it wrong. I was actually, my instinct was right. But no, man, again, I appreciate you joining us and excited to talk to you, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
All right, man. So, like I said, we jump right into it. And obviously want to talk a little football. Now, with the team coming back for, involuntary workouts very soon, what are your thoughts kind of on really what they can do? I know they're going to have to get tested, and then there's going to be a quarantine, I think, for at least a week, and then you really start going. Do you have any ideas? Is there any changes? Is it still, they got to go 2 days in, panties, 1 day in shells before they can go full once they get back going into camp, or is it just the normal?
They haven't even gotten that far yet. I mean, right now it's like limited workouts of 8 guys at a time in the weight room and on the field with Ryan Russell and the strength staff. So football hasn't gotten to a point yet where they're talking about football practice. That's like the next thing there. The first step is getting guys back on campus for the, summer conditioning type workouts. And the thing, I think the SEC and Auburn, is what Alan Green said on Tuesday. They want to see what those first 2 weeks look like with players back, with the workouts going on. And once they see how that goes, they'll start talking more about, okay, what are the next steps as far as, are there going to be OTA type things? Are we going to do a long fall camp? What are the next steps? But they want to get going with just the really simple stuff first, which is getting guys back on campus.
Yeah. So they're going to slow walk the process, obviously, because they have to. And I'm sure those guys are going to be monitored 24/7. I'll be interested to see if there are some spikes, kind of how they handle it, because I'm sure it'll obviously be team by team. But kind of moving on toward the season and kind of getting more toward the football talk, because I think we're about coronavirus to death. I think you'd agree with me. But looking at what Auburn has, and again, everybody I brought in here has talked about the offensive line being a weakness. I actually want to talk about one of their strengths. What do you think, Josh, is Auburn's best strength going into this next year?
I think it's having Bo Nix back. I know Bo Nix wasn't great last year. He was good for a true freshman. He wasn't great, but I think having him back just gives a lot of stability and it gives hope.
Yeah,
I think you can see that from talking to coaches and players. The thing that will maybe hold Auburn back or make you kind of less confident, it's the same thing that is happening with every school right now. He hasn't had that time with Chad Morris, with the receivers, with the new tight ends, that time in spring practice, which is so valuable for teams just to get those 15 practices and a spring game. He hasn't gotten those. That doesn't really put him behind anyone else because no one got those this year except for maybe a few schools started early. But I think having him back it gives you strength because remember last year in the spring, all you're talking about for months is who's going to be the quarterback. Is it going to be, who's going to win the job? Now you don't have to do that. Now it's just let's focus on everything else at the forefront because we know we have a guy at quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. And I think obviously with this pandemic and that time off, it always behooves you to have guys returning, but I think it's almost amplified by double going into this season. And sticking on the offensive side of the ball, Josh, There's a few guys on the offensive line. I saw you had a tweet where you kind of projected what you thought maybe the offensive line would look like. And again, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you had Troxel at left tackle, obviously Brahms at center. I think Broderius at right guard. And I want to say Brandon Council at left guard and Killian Zarrere at the other tackle. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I also had Keandre Jones in there with Council and kind of that guard competition. Because I think, as a redshirt freshman, former four-star recruit, I think he's a guy who could push for a job because he's that talented.
Yeah. Now, what do you think with Zarrere and the injury? Obviously, I know he's probably lost some weight. Do you think he's a guy that's going to be? And again, I know obviously you're not him or you're not right next to him all the time, so it's impossible to know exactly. But you think he's a guy that's going to be healthy enough to not only get reps but start?
I think that's the hope. And obviously, Auburn's not going to know for sure until it gets him back on campus and has him start working out with everyone. So they'll find out a lot more about that in the next few weeks. But I think he's the guy. When they recruited him as a guy who they thought could come in and be an immediate kind of starter. And obviously he hurt his leg after that. So that puts him in a hole. But I think I would have felt less confident about his chances to start if Auburn had gone through spring practice and he wasn't, able to participate. I think the fact that everything has been delayed may help him because he's not going to be behind any of his teammates in terms of reps or experience. He's going to be behind, because he's still working back from an injury, but he's not going to have missed out on 15 practices. He's going to be in the same boat as everyone else, assuming he's healthy.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And now kind of moving to the other side of the ball, obviously with Kevin Steele, there's going to be a dip in production on defense, but Auburn's not going to be bad on defense. I mean, they got some young guys they're pretty excited about. I kind of want to talk about the secondary a little bit, and there's been a lot of talk about Roger McCreary. I think he's a guy that's going to be Auburn's number one corner. Is there anything you can give our audience? Do you believe that? Is he going to be the lockdown corner that they're projecting him to be?
I think he has a really good shot too. He played well last season. I think he suffered a little bit early on from what Noah Igbenogany suffered from 2 seasons ago, where teams were picking on him because he was the young guy, he was the inexperienced guy. But he started playing really well towards the end of the season. I think you'll see him jump up right into that number one spot and be a guy. What I'm curious to see is what happens at the other cornerback spot.
Yeah. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, because I think Smoke Monday and Jamie and Sure we're going to move into starting jobs at safety. That's, I think, pretty obvious. The other cornerback spot, I think a lot of it depends on Christian Tutt. He played really well at nickel last year, so you can keep him there and maybe put a Marco Domio or a Nehemiah Pritchett at corner, or maybe if you tried Tutt out at corner, you could play a Jordan Peters at nickel or something like that. I think Auburn has options. Again, I'm going to probably say it 1,000 times. This is one of those things where they would have tried a bunch of stuff during the spring and saw what fit. Yeah. They didn't get those chances, but I'm sure they've been talking about it, and they have a couple different ways they can go. So I'm very curious to see how it'll all shake out before the season starts.
Yeah, I agree. I'm interested to see if Christian Tutt can cross train like that. But I think you're right. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, he's a really good nickel, and I wonder, without the spring, I'm sure they've talked about it, like you said. I just wonder if with the limited amount of time, because again, I think Marco Damio's a pretty good player, and as well as I do. Speaking about Killian Zarrere too, kind of to your point. These guys don't sign JUCO players to sit the bench. So they're going to give Marco Damio a chance to win that job. Not that Nehemiah Pritchett's not a bad player, not that Nehemiah Pritchett's a bad player, but again, I think they signed Marco to have some pretty good competition over there.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. You don't bring in JUCO guys to kind of slowly bring them along. Marco's got 2 years left. They're going to come in, and I think he'll have a shot to play. If he doesn't start, I think I'd be surprised if Marco Domio wasn't heavily in the rotation at corner.
Yeah, and again, I think it's going to be a great battle. Obviously, the linebacker situation, Auburn's loaded there, and they've got a few good committed already. I kind of do want to move to recruiting, and Auburn's picked up some momentum. Obviously, they got their quarterback, got some commitments from some really good offensive linemen, and they're in on some others. Josh, do you think Auburn's going to sign 7-0 linemen in this class? I'm getting the feeling that they're going to try and oversign.
I think they'd love to. I think you're seeing kind of the effects of really not signing that many offensive linemen for so many years. I mean, they've just really been low on volume in that position for reasons that I don't understand still. I think if they can oversign an offensive line, I think they'll do it because you need to build that depth and you need to have that next group coming up, because you don't want to be in this situation like they are right now where it's like trying to rely on potentially a JUCO guy or 2 JUCO guys or a grad transfer. I don't think this is a situation that teams want to be in. They want to know that next wave is coming. So I think if Auburn, they have the 4 right now. There's obviously a lot of good ones out there still with the Brockermeyer twins and all those guys. If they can add to that group and get 5, 6, 7, I mean, I think they'd love to, just to give Jack Bicknell that foundation on offensive line.
Exactly. And you know as well as I do, you never turn a great one down. So, God forbid they sign someone and Marius Mims wants to come, they'll find room for Marius Mims.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
It's something where I'm interested to see how that plays out. I'm also interested to see, Josh, because, again, you've covered this for so long, and really a quarterback commitment is the keystone of every recruiting class, because typically you try and sign a quarterback in every recruiting class. At least most people do. And in my opinion, Auburn signed a really good one. Obviously, I'm talking about Demetrius Davis from North Shore out in Texas. Can you kind of tell me your evaluation of him? I know you watch these guys and you've seen a lot of them. Does he kind of remind you of someone a little bit?
Well, the nickname I saw for him that someone tweeted was Thick Marshall, which I'm absolutely in love with.
That is absolutely 100% on the money.
Yeah. I think the thing that stands out most to me about Demetrius Davis is, I mean, obviously you can look at his highlights and they're really impressive, and you can look at the numbers, which again, really impressive. Mm-hmm. But I think when I see him, not in terms of play style, but in terms of feeling I think of Deshaun Watson when he was going into the NFL draft, where everyone wanted to kind of say like, well, he's this, well, he's that. But I kept seeing all this dude did was win.
Yeah.
At Clemson. All he did was win. Demetrius Davis, all that dude has done is win.
Yeah.
I think the last 2 seasons, this team is 32-1 and they've won 2 state titles. Like that you can't coach that. You can't, like, that's just something a kid has. If he wants to win, wants to be a leader. I think if you start with that, then add the talent. I mean, I think Bo Nix is going to be the starter this year. Obviously, he's going to be the starter next year. I think you're talking about in 2022. I think when he's or 20, whatever you're talking about.
We know where you're going with it. 100%.
After Bo Nix's junior year, I think Demetrius Davis is going to be the next guy, because I think there's a really good chance that if Bo Nix continues in the path he's on, he could be a 3-and-done guy.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think the smart money's on that. And again, what I like about when I watch a quarterback commit, a big judgment for me or a big category for me is seeing who wants to play with them. And you can already see the reverberation that Demetrius has had, for other recruits. I mean, Jaden Roberts, his teammate, a 4-star guard that's 6'6", 330, an absolute road grader. You have, receivers, Latrell Neville, who's a Virginia Tech commit. You have Landon King, who decommitted from Texas. And these guys all talk. And again, you've seen it, Josh. Are you seeing the same things I am? And again, I think that's one of the most positive signs that you have a leader.
Yeah, I'm seeing the exact same thing. And when you have that, when guys want to play with you, that's when you know you're good. And I think the last time I really remember seeing that at Auburn most recently was with Owen Papo, who was a guy that people just wanted to play with. And we've seen how incredibly good Owen Papo is already at just a true freshman linebacker last year. So I think, those guys that win, those guys that lead, those guys that are that talented, that's important. But to see the way people rally around them, want to be a part of what they're doing, those are the guys you need in your class. And Auburn has done a really good job getting one so far. And I mean, to see the jump they made in recruiting in just a few weeks, with going up from like 3 commitments to 8 in just a span of a couple of days, is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I think honestly, Landon King, I think Lake McCree is going to commit to USC out in California, and then Landon will pull the trigger probably shortly after that. You look at a guy like Cam Kitchens, who I think Auburn leads for, Christian Leary, who in my opinion Auburn leads for. People think I'm crazy on that one. And then Nyland Green, I think Auburn surged with him lately. So again, you like you pointed out, they just for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, and you kind of see that in recruiting as well. But moving on to basketball, Josh, again, I know you look at all sports and you have everything covered, and I know this is a hypothetical and there's no right answer. Auburn gets in as a 4 seed with last year's team. Let's say they're in same region as Baylor. How far do they go?
I've thought about this a lot since the whole shutdown, and I don't know, because that team was such an enigma to me.
I don't either, Josh. I don't either, bro. I have no clue. I think they could play a game like, where they're down 17 against, somebody that doesn't let them come back in the first round. So I just I didn't know.
Yeah. I kind of said it all season, and I still believe it now. If you told me that Auburn team would go back to the Final Four, I could see it. If you told me that Auburn team would lose to a 12 seed by 13 points in the first round, I'd be like, yeah, I can see that.
Right.
I think anything was possible because, I mean, they weren't a great 3-point shooting team, but they had games where they were really good at shooting 3-pointers, and they had games where they just looked terrible on offense, but also those games they happened to come back from 17 points down and win. So, like, anything was possible with that team. That's why I think, I mean, having the tournament canceled sucks for literally everybody, but it really sucks for that Auburn team because there was a chance that it was going to go on another run, and it didn't get the chance.
Yeah, and again, you hate it for the guys, the Austin Wileys, the Samir Dowdys, the Anthony McLemores, guys that really help, Coach Pearl and his staff turn the program around. And speaking about where the program is now, I had Corey Evans on yesterday, and we kind of released a little same kind of rap session like I'm having with you right now. And he believes Jonathan Kuminga's going professional, and I do too. And I know you've kept up with Auburn, with Jalen Green and Greg Brown and all that stuff. I'm a big LJ Figueroa guy, Josh. I think he fits. I think he reminds me a little bit of Samir Dowdy. He can come in and play the 2. He can play the 3. He actually gives you a little better rebounding than Samir did. Have you watched his game a little bit? And who do you think out there is the most ideal fit going into next season at the wing?
I have watched this game a little bit. I've watched both Gatch. I guess Gatch is would not be immediately eligible, I don't think.
Yeah.
Would Figueroa be? I don't think so, right?
No. I think Jack's going to stay up north. I'm guessing Minnesota.
Yeah. So I'm not convinced that Auburn's going to land another piece. I think it wants to. I don't know if it will. I'm fascinated to see what this team looks like next season.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's like athletically, it's talented, it's explosive. Like you can see, like you see moments last year, like, man, these young guys could be real good.
Yeah.
But they're going to be young, like young.
Yeah.
Like Bruce Pearl joking about bringing Gerber baby food on the road, like not joking. Like they're going to be kids. It'll be fun to watch.
It will. I think it's going to be as talented a group as they had. And one thing Corey was talking about was just how high they are on Dylan Cardwell. And he's a guy that, obviously didn't play his senior year. And Corey was talking about if he did, you're probably looking at a top 70, player. So I think he's a guy because, I think Stretch is going to give you something. The more I was big on Stretch early. And the more I hear is that it's probably going to take him a little more time to be able to do what he has to do on the interior. So the more I'm looking at this, the more I'm thinking Dylan Cardwell is going to have to come in and play.
Yeah, I think if you want to compare it to last year, I think Cardwell is going to be more of your Austin Wiley, like your back to the basket kind of true interior presence, where Stretch is more of the Anthony McLemore, maybe stretch the floor, maybe be the defensive shot blocker type guy. I'm really high on Stretch. He's kind of the same way where it might take him a little while to really fit. Like he might be a guy who almost has a Jalen Williams type sophomore season where he's kind of part of the rotation or a small time player and then gets better and better as the season goes along. But I mean, I think Cardwell was huge for that reason. It gives you time to bring Stretch along because you need a second center. You can't play with just one, and Auburn really had only one. Now they have 2, which helps tremendously.
Exactly, especially, when foul trouble, especially with a young guy. One of them's going to get in foul trouble. You can almost bet in every game. So,
well, in the SEC, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, 100%. If you watch Dylan Cardwell's film, I mean, half of it, his highlights are fouls, but, I love the way he plays. But staying with basketball, something that we've talked about a ton on the show is kind of the transition of where Auburn was to where they are now. My question is, at what point, how many years would it take, Josh? So they've had 3 years of success, right? 3 years of a high-level elite success. How many years in a row do you have to have that? Or how many, is it 6 out of 7 where you start to actually truly become a national power? Or is it 40 years? Like, I don't know.
I think it's a long time because I think it comes in waves. And I think you can lose it. Like I remember, I grew up in Connecticut, huge UConn fan. And there was, from 2000, like late 90s to early 2000s, and that program was a power every year, power. And it's not now. It's kind of gone downhill a little bit. There's been some coaching here. It just hasn't been as good recently. And it kind of falls out of the picture. And that the fact that it had to change conferences and all that doesn't help, but you can fall out of the picture when you're not a Kansas or a Kentucky or a Duke or a North Carolina. So I think there's tiers. There's those blue bloods. Auburn, to become a blue blood, I mean, probably never happen, but it would take 40 years of just sustained success. But you can get to that second tier, tier of teams that are there every year. They're not blue bloods, but they're consistent powers. And I think if Bruce Pearl continues on this path and Auburn goes to the tournament, they technically have only gone 2 years in a row. They would have gone 3 years in a row. If you go 4, 5, 6, and you kind of build that, especially in a conference like the SEC where there is room for upward momentum, because there isn't a consistently dominant team past Kentucky. I think you can start to get to that conversation of where this team's not a blue blood, but it's a consistent power, and there's something to be reckoned with every year.
Yeah. And I want to stay in the SEC, and something that came out yesterday, according to Dick Vitale, which, I don't think Dick Vitale would lie to everybody on Twitter. That's just me, though. But LSU got hit with a notice of allegations yesterday. And everybody I talk to thinks they're going to get a pass. Josh, I think they're going to get hammered.
Think so?
He's on tape. That's the difference to me, because if they let this one slide and he is on tape saying that I'm going to make a strong ass offer, we made a strong ass offer, they're talking about money, they're talking about changing hands, and they've already done this, to programs. I mean, if they can do it to Patino, they can do it to Will Wade. And I don't think LSU has enough juice in the college basketball, I don't know what you'd say, kingdom I don't know. It's just a gut feeling. I think they're going to get hammered.
I mean, I personally, like when I heard, obviously we saw what he said in the tape, and then we heard the tape in that HBO documentary. When I heard the tape, I'm like, my first reaction was like, how is this dude still the head coach right now?
Yeah, maybe I'm nuts. I don't know.
But I just think the NCAA, it's toothless when it comes to punishment more often than not.
Yeah.
So I just don't like my default is I expect there to be a lot of talk and a lot of words said and a lot of reports and a lot of responses. And my default is that nothing ends up happening. Yeah. Sometimes I'm wrong, sometimes stuff doesn't happen, but most of the time it's like North Carolina was under the spotlight for 100 years and nothing happened. So it's hard to predict punishment. I usually don't expect it, and when it does come, I'm surprised.
Yeah, and another reason I think that, because I want to be more specific, is because they're going to do nothing to Coach K and Duke. They're going to do nothing to them, regardless of what Zion says. But I think there's going to be like we'll do nothing to Duke, but we're going to hammer LSU trade off because they can. Yeah, to even it back out. That's I'm just looking at kind of the scenario around. And to me, getting hammered is, I think, a year postseason ban. I think a loss of multiple scholarships. I think a loss of recruiting time on the road. And I don't know if Will Wade survives it. Mike Miller.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, man.
I don't know.
Maybe
it'll be interesting to see.
It will. But before I let you go, Josh, last question, man. And again, it's so early. I mean, they're still figuring out how they're going to get everybody back. But if you just looking at it right now, and again, if you're not ready, that's fine. Nobody's going to be mad at you. Can you tell me, how do you think the top three in the SEC West are going to finish next year?
Oh, man.
I know.
That's tough, because I feel like this year, more than most, there's not a clear favorite.
Man, me and you are on the exact same page. I think people at the top are going to be 10-2.
Yeah, I feel like if I had to guess right now, Alabama is going to be picked to win it.
Yes.
Because it's Alabama, they're going to be picked to win it. LSU, still super talented, coming off a championship. We don't know what they're going to look like with a new quarterback. Without Joe Brady, just don't know. Alabama, you don't really know what they're going to look like. Is Mac Jones the guy? Is it Bryce Young? I don't know. And then Auburn, there's a lot to like, but there's also a new offense, and I think there's hope of that the offense will help and become better. But again, we don't know for sure, especially with uncertainty in the offensive line. So you could tell me any order for those top three. The one team I don't believe will be in that top three is Texas A&M. I just don't think Texas A&M.
I'm not falling into that trap.
I think Texas A&M is like a really good fourth best team in the West.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they have the talent. They could beat some people they're not supposed to. They're just not consistent enough for me. And they're so Jekyll and Hyde during the season. But, real quick too, if you look over at the East, I mean, Georgia's breaking in a new quarterback. I mean, there's some question marks over there too. I think it's going to be a free for all.
Yeah, the fact that Bo Nix has gone from true freshman starter to maybe one of the most experienced quarterbacks in the SEC in the span of one offseason is pretty wild.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, man. And it's going to be an interesting year, especially with all that's happened. And I know everybody's ready to get it back. But Josh, man, I appreciate you coming on, dude. We got to have you back on as this thing progresses, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I'm happy to come on.
Yeah. All right. Wait, now, can you tell everybody, I know you're on Twitter. Can you tell everybody where to find you at?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Josh Vitale. That's JoshVitale. And my stuff's online at MontgomeryAdvertiser.com.
All right, man. Well, again, Josh, I appreciate you and appreciate everybody listening. This is another episode of the Jboy Show with Auburn beat writer and Montgomery Advertiser writer, Josh Vitale. All right, this is Jboy, and Jboy's out of here.